Coming up on this Thursday edition of Newsline at noon, the Korean government proposes the biggest spending increase in 7 years for its 2015 budget, in an indication of its determination to revitalize the economy. The government plans to impose a tariff of more than 500% on rice imports as it begins opening its rice market next year in the face of strong protests by farmers. Plus, voters in Scotland will head to the polls to decide whether they stay a part of or break away from the United Kingdom. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
It's noon Thursday, September 18th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this lunchtime. The Korean government has laid out its budget plan for next year that raises spending by the largest amount since the onset of the 2008 global financial crisis.
The Finance Ministry says its expansionary fiscal policies are necessary to pull the economy out of a low-growth trap. Hwang Jie starts us off.
The government will maintain its expansionary economic policies in 2015 as it looks to boost the nation's sluggish growth rate. In its budget proposal laid out during a cabinet meeting on Thursday, the Finance Ministry said it will raise budget spending by 5.7% from this year to 376 trillion won, or roughly $360 billion. The ministry expects the increased expenditure to actively boost the economy. It said that although the move could threaten the nation's fiscal soundness in the short term, the greater priority now is on breathing fresh life into the sputtering economic recovery. That way, the ministry believes Korea will be able to achieve long-term fiscal balance through increased tax revenues generated on the back of strong economic activities. The government expects tax revenues to rise on average 5.1% annually from 2014 through 2018 as the increased spending plan is projected to help the economy grow by 4% next year. Korea's debt-to-GDP ratio, however, is expected to rise about 1 percentage point in 2018 from this year to over 36%. The government says a national debt-to-GDP rate in the mid-30% range reflects Korea's relatively healthy fiscal situation, as it's still much lower than the OECD average of around 110%. The expansionary budget also includes increasing expenditure in safety-related government projects like an overall inspection of safety facilities. The government wants to prevent large-scale accidents and disasters like April's ferry sinking from happening again. The new budget proposal is in line with the government's recent efforts to prop up growth that included an additional spending plan worth $11 billion in the second half of this year. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
513%, that's the tariff rate on rice imports that ruling party lawmakers and the Agriculture Ministry settled on Thursday morning as Korea prepares to liberalize its rice market from next year. Now, despite the high rate, the move is facing fierce resistance from farmers and civic groups. Kim Young-gil has the details.
The Korean government has set its tariff on rice imports at 513%. The Agriculture Ministry said the high tariff will help protect Korea's rice industry as imported rice will be more expensive. Lawmakers from the ruling Saenuri Party also said imposing high tariffs was the only answer to help locally produced rice compete with the influx of imported rice on the market. The move comes as the country is set to liberalize its rice market from next year. The ministry said the proposed tariff rate will be submitted to the World Trade Organization before the end of this month. If the rate is confirmed by the WTO, the proposed tariff will go into effect on January 1st of 2015. However, it could be months until the process is finalized, while the WTO assesses whether the tariff rate proposed by Korea is appropriate. Korea had been allowed to delay the opening of its rice market under a WTO quota agreement in 1993 in exchange for gradually increasing its mandatory import quota, which reached more than 400,000 tons this year. The agreement with the WTO requires Korea to continue importing the mandatory quota even after the market is opened next year at a 5% tariff rate. The government decided to open its rice import market as it is keen on protecting its own production in the light of declining domestic rice consumption. However, farmers and civic groups oppose the move, saying it will hurt their livelihoods and the local rice market. Kim Young-git, Arirang News.
Senior officials from Korea and Japan will meet in Tokyo on Friday to resume talks on Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. This is the fourth meeting of its kind and comes just days after Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se held private talks with Japan's ambassador to Korea for the first time, raising hopes about a possible thawing of their current frosty ties. It also comes amid rumors of a summit between President Park Geun-hye and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on the sidelines of the APEC summit in November. The two have not held a bilateral meeting since taking office early last year due to ongoing tensions surrounding historical and territorial matters. And there was also a report that Seoul and Tokyo had discussed a visit by President Park to Japan on her way home from the UN General Assembly next week, but Korea's presidential office denied such speculation. Spokesperson Min Kyung-wook dismissed the report outright, saying the two countries had not talked about a possible summit between the two leaders and that the possibility was never even considered. Citing an unnamed source, local broadcaster MBC said the two sides discussed the matter early last month, but that talks were later called off after Seoul determined that Tokyo's position on historical issues was not satisfactory.
The United States has expressed its reservations about a plan that would relocate all U.S. forces to the city of Pyeongtaek by the year 2016. Citing multiple diplomatic sources, Yonhap News reports that the U.S. has stressed the need to keep a brigade division at a military base north of the Hangang River. Washington's reasoning is that the brigade, which is in charge of countering long-range rockets and missiles from North Korea during wartime, will not be capable of adequately carrying out its mission if it is transferred to Pyeongtaek, which is about 70 kilometers south of Seoul. An official at South Korea's defense ministry said relocation plans for all U.S. bases remains unchanged. The U.S. envoy on North Korean human rights is urging Pyongyang to free three American detainees in the country if they want to spur international tourism. In a column published in the Washington Post on Wednesday, Robert King said releasing the U.S. citizens would be the start of reducing the risk of traveling to North Korea. He said there's little doubt the Americans are being used by the North for propaganda purposes to encourage the U.S. to send a high-level official. Now, on a related note, Victor Cha, who is the Korea chair for the Washington-based think tank Center for Strategic and International Studies, posted on the center's website that the U.S. government should impose a travel ban on North Korea until the detainees are freed. The United Kingdom is holding its breath for one of the most historic votes in British history. The final pleas and stump speeches are over, and millions of Scots will cast their ballots on Thursday to determine the future for Scotland. Will it stay part of the centuries-old union or go? Shin Se-min reports.
For what might be one of the most important decisions of their lives, it comes down to the simplest of choices: yes or no. Some 4 million eligible Scottish voters will head to the polls in a matter of hours to decide on whether or not they want to leave the UK after more than 300-year union.
Yes, I'm happy with the decisions on that very well. And I'll go all the way. And if we get it tomorrow, I'll be a very happy man.
Definitely no, no, no. Because we're better as a team A team always works better than an individual.
The latest poll released Wednesday showed a paper-thin lead for the No campaign at 51 to 49%, but it's far too close to call. The survey also showed as many as 600,000 Scots are still undecided about which way they'll vote.
I am still undecided. It's worrying, but it's such a huge decision to make, and we all need to take our vote very, very seriously, so I still really don't know what I'm going to do.
If Scotland decides to secede from Great Britain, there are a lot of unknowns. Will the newly independent country still have a future with the European Union? And there'll also be a critical decision to take on its currency. They'll also only have 18 months to arrange all the logistics. But if Scotland chooses to stay within the UK, the relations with the country will most likely be different, as British Prime Minister David Cameron has said London will grant Scotland more powers to govern itself. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Vote to stick together.
Now let's continue looking at more international headlines that we're following on this Thursday afternoon with our Eunice Kim standing by for us at the News Center.
Eunice, some progress in the preparations to take down Islamic State militants. U.S. President Barack Obama's plans to train moderate Syrian rebels has passed the House of Representatives.
Yeah, begrudgingly, but yes, President Obama's ask for $500 million to better equip Syrians to fight off the jihadist militant group has overcome a key hurdle. This as America's top diplomat, John Kerry, says the needed international coalition is growing. Our Park Ji-won has this story.
Despite reservations, the U.S. House of Representatives signed off on President Barack Obama's plans to arm and train Syrian rebel forces for their fight against Islamic State militants. The Senate votes next and is widely expected to approve the bill.
I want to start off by saying thank you to House members, Republican and Democrat, who came together today to pass an important component on our strategy for dealing with this terrible terrorist organization.
It's the latest step in the U.S. plan to degrade and destroy the IS militant group. Appearing in front of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said the international community was coming together to counter the threat. He said more than 50 countries have already pledged their support, and that more were expected to follow at the UN General Assembly next week.
I'm confident that with our strategy in place and our international partners by our side, we will have all that we need. And with the help of the Congress, we will be able to succeed in degrading and ultimately destroying this monstrous organization wherever it exists.
The strategy will apparently not include U.S. ground troops, something that President Obama repeated during a visit to the U.S. Central Command on Wednesday.
But I want to be clear. The American forces that have been deployed to Iraq do not and will not have a combat mission. They will support Iraqi forces on the ground as they fight for their own country against these terrorists.
Obama emphasized that the U.S. would maintain a supporting role, saying it's the best way to secure peace in the region amid the brutality of the extremist group. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Thank you, sir.
Meanwhile, 15 terror suspects are in custody in Australia, just days after the country had raised its terror warning to high, its second highest level. Authorities said intelligence had shown the individuals were plotting random acts of violence in public spaces, triggering the country's largest counterterrorism operation early Thursday morning, as about 800 police officers raided dozens of properties across Sydney. Similar raids were conducted conducted in Brisbane and Logan as well. This as police in Kosovo have also arrested 15 people in an effort to obstruct the recruitment of fighters for the self-dubbed Islamic State. Local media reported that Muslim leaders were among those detained, including the head of the Grand Mosque in the capital city. Some 200 Kosovo Albanians and 60 Australians are believed to have gone to Syria and Iraq to fight. On his 64th birthday, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi welcomed Chinese President Xi Jinping in a rare state visit, only the third by a Chinese head of state to the world's second most populous country. The two leaders are expected to reach economic deals worth tens of billions of dollars during Xi's 3-day trip, compared to the $400 million China had poured into China in the past 14 years. New Delhi is hoping for Beijing to provide a much-needed boost into its infrastructure and manufacturing projects, while China seeks overseas growth opportunities and an ally in its tense regional affairs. And at the International Whaling Commission conference in Slovenia, Japan is seeking to resume whale hunting, despite widespread global criticism that had culminated in a UN court ban. It pushed to change a resolution about global whaling criteria to allow Tokyo to engage in what it calls scientific whaling. The UN International Court of Justice had ruled in March that the East Asian nations program was not scientific, nor had it produced substantive research. In reaction, Australia joined New Zealand to stop Japan's harpooning of hundreds of whales, saying that it is of the view that lethal scientific research is not necessary.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea, connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on Newsline at Noon with Mark Broome and Eoh Jin-joo.
I'm Eoh Jin-joo with Pro.
Market researcher, strategy analytics said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about
The U.S. Federal Reserve has vowed to keep interest rates near zero for a considerable time, arguing that the economy is expanding at a moderate pace. Chairwoman Janet Yellen said the country's inflation rate was running below the policy committee's 2% objective and that there were still too many Americans out there who want jobs but can't find them. Also, the Fed decided to stay on course on the tapering of its monthly bond buying program until it comes to an end in October, saying it will cut an additional $10 billion starting next month. And moving on, it's not just tech enthusiasts that are excited about the upcoming releases of Apple and Samsung gadgets that will come with upgraded performances. The memory chip and gaming industries are also jumping for joy, as our Kim Jin tells us they have much to gain.
Pre-orders for the Galaxy Note 4 began on Thursday in Korea. The newest phablet from Samsung comes with a 64-bit application processor, the first to run on the Android-based operating system, which means it will process data 2 times faster than current models that are equipped with 32-bit processors. And much like a car engine that has a higher engine displacement, this means the 64-bit Galaxy Note 4 requires more space for random access memory, making higher quality memory chips a necessity. That's got Korea's semiconductor industry excited. Industry trackers predict a 25% boost or more in memory chips as more companies release 64-bit smartphones, particularly those that require 4 to 8 GB of RAMs. The gaming industry also stands to benefit since the 64-bit smartphone will have higher definition. Gamers will enjoy a better experience when using their smartphones, which will narrow the gap between PC and smartphone gaming. Apple's iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, which is expected to be released in Korea between October and November, is also equipped with a 64-bit application processor. Google is expected to unveil its 64-bit smartphone sometime this fall. Kim Jin, Arirang News.
Chinese investors remained active on the Korean bourse for the 8th consecutive month last month. According to the Financial Supervisory Service on Thursday, Chinese investors now account for a quarter of the total shares purchased by foreign investors this year at $2 billion. Among major foreign investors from countries like the US, the UK, Germany and Japan, China has been the only one, really, to remain bullish on Seoul shares since the start of the year. Market analysts say Chinese investors are bringing their money here because of the slowing growth rate in China and the decline in profitability of American bonds. Korea has become one of the most visited countries by Chinese tourists, and with China's National Day holiday just around the corner, a record number of tourists from across the West Sea are expected to visit Korea. Our Kim Min-ji takes a look at the numbers.
China's week-long National Day holiday kicks off on October 1st this year. Around 160,000 Chinese tourists are expected to flock to Seoul, up 35% from the same period a year ago. Then exactly how many Chinese tourists come to Korea? Nearly 8 million foreign tourists have visited the country this year as of July. Of them, around 3.4 million were Chinese visitors, meaning 4 in every 10 foreign tourists were Chinese. And it's a trend that's expected to continue. The total number of Chinese visitors is expected to reach 5 million next month and 6 million by the end of the year. Korea's tourism industry is getting a nice boost from the surge. Chinese people are much wealthier than they used to be, with their gross national income per capita standing around $6,700. And they aren't shy about spending while they're here either. Data shows Chinese visitors were the biggest tourist spenders in 2013, with individuals shelling out about $2,300 per trip on average, up 80% from 2008. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now we're just one day away from the start of the 17th Asian Games in Incheon. Korea's history with the regional sporting event dates back some 6 decades, and over that time, Team Korea has proven itself to be a very fierce competitor. Kwon So-ah gives us a brief history of Korea's place in the Asian Games.
Asia's biggest sporting event, the Asian Games, finally gets started on Friday in Korea's northwestern port city of Incheon. The history of the Asian Games dates back to 1951, when it was first hosted in New Delhi. 35 years later, the event came to South Korea for the first time when it was hosted by Seoul, followed by Busan in 2002. Incheon now becomes the third Korean city to have the honors. South Korea first participated in the Asian Games in 1954 in Manila, when it placed third in the overall medal count and has sent athletes to every event since. In 1970 in Bangkok, Korean swimmer Cho Oh-ryun began his rise to legendary status, winning gold in the 400 and 1500-meter freestyles. At the 8th Games in Bangkok, Korea's Kim Jin-ho won gold in archery, while Yang Jung-mo came out on top in wrestling. In 1981, Korea started preparing to host the 10th Asian Games in Seoul. Stadiums, accommodations, and new roads were built leading up to the event in 1986.
30억 아시아인이 공동의 번영과 우위를 약속하면서 아시아의 영원한 전진을 다짐한 아시아인의 축제가 열린 것입니다.
Team Korea thrived that year, breaking various world records and finishing second overall. Korea showed its superiority in male and female hockey, defeated China in table tennis, and swept up medals in all 12 weight classes of boxing.
동화가 꺼졌습니다. 우리는 해냈습니다.
Korea has grown into a powerful sports nation throughout the years and aims to prove it once again at the 2014 Incheon Asian Games, where the goal is to win at least 90 gold medals. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. This morning was cooler than yesterday morning, but the afternoon will be warmer in the upper provinces, while the southern areas will have similar highs to yesterday. And as we can see, layers of clouds are covering up the peninsula, but it should gradually clear up for the upper regions as we head into the midday, while the partly to mostly cloudy skies should stick around for the southern provinces. So it will be warmer warmer up north and cool down south. With that, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The high in Seoul will soar to 27, and Daegu and Busan should only make it to 24, while Gwangju will rise to 25 later in the day. Now for other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon will top out at 23 and 26, while Dokdo should see a high of 22. Now the weather outlook for the rest of the week is looking sunny and breezy here in the capital. But if you're making plans for this weekend, Saturday should be a better day to do so, as we have a rain in the forecast on Sunday. Well, that's all for me today, and let's send it back to Mark and Jin-joo in the studio.
Well, thank you very much for the weather, Jihan, and those are stories we're following at this hour.
Mark and I'll be back at the same time on Friday. Thank you for watching.